It was 1967, and the script floated around and somehow came to me with not much chance. The agency, I wasn't that well known at the time, and the agency thought that I'd be very right for it. I read it, and it seemed like a commercial piece, if you could make that determination then. But I can't remember how it really came to me, other than just floated around and came to me, but I was told almost straight away that, as right as it was for me, that was a long shot because they wanted stars. I was aware that there were a lot of people fighting for me, and I was certainly very moved by that. The studio didn't want me. It was 20th Century Fox, and they wanted 2 stars. I think they wanted Steve McQueen at that time and Paul. And I guess the beauty of the story, and to my fortune, Paul and the writer, and George in particular. George is the one that went to the mat for it. He said, look, it's my movie, I'm the director. And finally, as I understood it, they just kept beating him up, and he beat them up, and they kept forcing him to look at other actors, and they ran out of other actors. I didn't feel in rehearsal that anything special was happening, but I never do. Also, I was too young. At the time, I was only 30 years old, and it was a new experience. It was the first real big film. And I was so much into it as an actor. I was so much into the process of acting and rehearsing that I wasn't able to step aside like maybe the writer could, or even the director, or maybe even Paul, and say, gee, this feels this way or that way. I was too much in the process of developing the character and developing a connection with Paul. Sure, I knew it was a big thing because it was a big movie. It was advertised as a big movie. It was to be changed a fair amount from the movie that I read. The movie that I read did not really have the depth that George brought to it. It was quite jokey. And it was always anachronistic, but that didn't bother me. But I mean, it bothered some critics, but it didn't bother me. But George is the one that really gave it a kind of dimension and breadth. By opening it up, it wasn't quite so much jokes back and forth. You know, he created space for behavior and for character development that I think is what really gave the film that extra lift. My admiration for George Roy Hill. I mean, this guy really had, first of all, he was just perverse enough to make it an interesting experience. I appreciated that. He was wily and wicked and full of surprises and enjoyed being surprised back, so that made it lively and I liked it. But beyond that, George had such discipline for the work. I mean, he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He was totally prepared. He has no fat in his films, and I learned a lot from that. He really understands the importance of story. And just working with George, because that was the first real film experience I really had, was a pleasure. And it's got a carry-over resonance for me. Lulu Bettinson. Lulu Bettinson came on the set, Butch's sister. She came on the set and she looked at the situation. She said, okay, she had kind of a squinty eye. The great thing about Lulu, she lived down this little town called Circleville, and she drove over the pass, so to speak, to see us filming in St. George. And she was all tickled to see the horses and the cowboys and everything, but she didn't know what to expect, because how can you tell looking at just a scene being shot? And it was the scene where Harvey Logan gets kicked in the balls by Paul. And so she saw that, and she said, well, is this what the movie's going to be like, you know? And not that it couldn't have happened, but anyway, later, because she was pretty shrewd, she was tough, and the studio didn't want her on the wrong side of things because she was a living relative. They didn't want her stepping up and saying, hey, this didn't happen, or that's not the way it was, or this is nonsense. So they were trying to buy her. And so they were having a hard time. They were trying to get her to the premiere. They wanted to get her to fly back to New Haven, Connecticut. I mean, I think they had it at New Haven because George went to school at Yale, because I wondered what we were doing there, but since it had nothing to do with Butch Cassidy. But they were trying to get her there and also get her on board to support the film. And she was like not having any part of it. She said, well, I'll see the film when I see it, and we'll see. And so they wanted to send me in as an emissary, because I lived in Utah, to talk to her. So there's this big confab in Salt Lake City with the field reps for 20th Century Fox. And most of those field guys in those days, maybe it hasn't changed, just played golf a lot. You know, and suddenly they had all this heat and they had to do something, and they were really panicked. So they said, well, you talk to her, okay? So we all sit in the office, and She says yes, and she's very quiet and very sweet. And she says, well, I don't know. I haven't seen the film. And Mr. Redford seems like a very nice man, but I don't know. I haven't seen the film. And I don't know what I'm going to say. And they said, would you come back to the premiere? Well, I don't know. I've never been on an airplane before, and I don't know that I want to go. So they could see that she was going to be a tough case and wasn't going to be bought too easily by anything. And so finally the guy who got so desperate, he said, but look, you know, we've got, this is a lot of money that we have, this, and it's in the can. This film is in the can. And she was like looking for some money. She was like looking, what am I going to get out of this? What are you going to give me to have me go to the premiere and talk nice about the film? And the guy said, well, we can't, you know, you don't understand. The film is in the can. It's done. And she said, oh, okay. She says, well, I'm not in the can. So I knew that she and I were going to get along okay. And we did. I stayed in touch with her and close to her until her death. I went to her home years later. I did a piece for the National Geographic on riding the old Outlaw Trail, and it ended, the story started up in Casey, Wyoming, and ended there at her place with me talking to her. And she had letters from him when he wrote when he was away. And she was only 6 years old when he left the house. But it was really through the letters and the correspondence that she was able to stay in touch. Now beyond that, there may be myth. I don't know. I like to play practical jokes with people, and I played some pretty good ones. But that, by far, I would have to say is I had the most with them. I mean, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. Because I suddenly realized I'd been completely had over 2 months. 2 months of strategy and 2 months of total sandbag. Complete, you just had to love it. I mean, you just had to appreciate it. But there I was, and I thought, well, now wouldn't this be great if I could win? That would make it the best of all. And I almost did. This film was the most fun. I mean, I remember saying at one time, well, I almost felt guilty getting paid for it. It's not quite true. I did have a good time, and working with Paul was great. And we developed a lifelong friendship as a result of it, both professionally and personally. And it was born out of a very natural working relationship, so that was good. And we had so much fun doing it that has to be probably the most fun on any film I've had. I remember Bill Goldman calling me at the time and just being devastated. And he said, I don't believe these sons of bitches. I don't believe these. And then George was even worse. And they took the attitude, the hell with it. The hell with them, the hell with it. And then suddenly the film started to pick up. And of course, they both just happened to be in the neighborhood every day to see if the film was going to be picked up, you know, gain strength. And it did. And within, God, I think about 2-3 weeks, it rose past whatever negative criticism there was. It just kind of blew right through it, and that was the end of that. Clearly, the critics missed the chord and very often that happens with critics. Is again, you know, they're so busy looking at it either from an intellectual or academic place, they miss what kind of a chord is really being touched with the general public. You know, if it doesn't fit some scheme that they have in mind, they say, "Oh, this is no good." But the fact is, that whole business about who are those guys just caught on. You know, as the song did. I remember the song got crucified. What's that song? And I wondered what it was doing in the film myself. I said, what's that got to do with anything? Raindrops? Falling on your head? Oh, come on. Well, I was wrong. And critics were wrong. Audiences loved it. I remember the experience of the film coming out. And I was surprised by the kind of success it had. And then it just ran away. It ran into the area of fashion and kind of social. It moved into a whole social strata in our society, and so I wasn't prepared for that at all. As to why, I think it had to do with more than guys running out of time. It had to do with a certain kind of bonding and a certain kind of connection, a real friendship. Whether it's male or female female, male, it doesn't really matter when you can put that on film in a very real way, in a very warm way and an entertaining way. I think it has a lot of currency. So I suspect that had something to do with it. And maybe just Paul and I together, you know. Paul and I are always talking about doing another project. I guess we're both as surprised as anybody else why that hasn't happened considering Hollywood's penchant for doing sequels. Although he and I were not interested in a sequel to either one of them. They tried to get us to do one of the Sting, Butch Cassidy, and we weren't interested in that. And but we were interested in working together in another picture. So the question is, what would that be? And you would have thought the agency, you know, basically very commerce-minded, would have done something, or the industry itself would have done something, because clearly it was a workable formula, but it just hasn't happened. There's not been a good script that has come our way that we wanted to commit to, but we would like to. This film unquestionably was the film that put me in a new place. I mean, I was known, you know, I'd done Barefoot in the Park and some other films. I'd been on the stage and in the theater, but this is the one that changed my life, where I could no longer live my life the way I had been living normally.